Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Cutter One. I am your host, Jay Just Jay, your resident troublemaker and your resident culture warrior. I hope you're all doing well on this Monday morning. Yep, start of another week, another long week. Yay. I'm sure those of you who are having to get up and head out to work today are in agreement with me. All right, so I just wanted to say thanks to everybody who showed up for the live stream on Saturday. It was really cool. We had a good time, good conversation. I enjoyed it. I hope you guys did too. Bunch of stuff coming up on next week's live stream, the upcoming one, this coming Saturday. So there'll be more about that as the week goes on. But yeah, so to get us started with this week, right? To show you that I am an equal opportunity caller out of bull crap, right? Well, okay, it's past the first minute of the video. I can use some colorful colloquialisms. YouTube doesn't like it if you do it too soon in the video. But anyway, I digress. So anyway, so yeah, to show that I'm an equal opportunity, this story that I'm going to do now to kick off this week, right? It comes to us from an interesting website that is known as the Rabbit Room. Okay, and some of you may know this, depending on how deep of a dive you've taken into this stuff. The Rabbit Room was the name of the back room in the pub in England, where C.S. Lewis and Tolkien and the rest of the Inklings, their little group, they would meet at this pub. And what they would do is they would be allowed to use the back room of said pub. And the back room of said pub was known as the Rabbit Room, right? So anyway, so this publication, I guess one of the founders of it and stuff like that went there, heard the story, the history of it and stuff like that, and decided to do a publication or an online publication known as the Rabbit Room. And the Rabbit Room looks to cultivate art, music, and stories around that are centered around the Christ-based communities, right? So in other words, it's a quasi-religious. I don't want to say they are a religious organization, but they are sort of geared towards a religious-based readership, right? Their whole thing is to put out news about art and culture and music and stuff like that around people who lead a Christ-centered life, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. In and of itself, there's nothing wrong with that. Listen, what or who or how you choose to worship is entirely your business, and nobody should be telling you anything about it. That's between you and whatever higher power you believe in. But what I did want to do is I wanted to point that out because you would not normally, especially in today's climate, like politically charged climate, right? You would not normally expect an organization like that to sort of come down on the side that this particular organization did, or I should say this particular author writing in this publication did, on this particular issue, right? And that being Amazon's The Rings of Power, and we'll get right to the story. But essentially, you have this religious-leaning online magazine or blog or whatever website, and an article has come out by one of their authors who is basically sort of making the case for why you should be supporting the Rings of Power, which seems rather ironic because the makers of the Rings of Power and the producers and the writers would be the first ones to want to get any hint of religious overtones or Tolkien's Catholicism out of the story, right? And they have, essentially, right? Look at Rings of Power. None of that underlying religious overtones and themes are in the new show, right? They were in the Peter Jackson film, and obviously they're in the books, but in the show, the new Amazon show, they are not there. So it's rather I was surprised that an organization like this would come out with a take like this. So let's get right into it. I'll bring it up here. This is coming to us from The Rabbit Hole by Livy Goodgame. Now, that is an awesome name right there. I'm sorry. I will say it. You sound like one of the evil Bond women. That's an evil Bond woman name, right? You guys know what I'm talking about, right? Livy Goodgame. But I digress. Let's get right into it. Libby says, if you have already begun the adventure of watching and discussing the Amazon Prime show titled The Rings of Power, hello, fellow traveler. Isn't this exciting? If you are on the fence, having second thoughts, or even not giving it any second thoughts, keep reading. It is my mission to nudge you out the door, down the road, and get you swept up into Middle Earth in the Second Age. So right there, that's the premise of her thing, is to convince you to watch this show. She's literally just laid it out. Excuse me. She's literally just laid it out for you. Okay. So let's continue. Those of you who picked up on the Gandalf reference have probably already seen the major motion pictures of J.R.R. Tolkien's world. The challenges of creating a show like this come firstly from the existence of those movies, and secondly, from all the lore that Tolkien provides in books that aren't the Lord of the Rings trilogy or The Hobbit. Okay, so right out of the gate, she's basically saying that, okay, the problem with that Rings of Power has is Peter Jackson's adaptations films and the additional work that Tolkien wrote for the Legendarium, right? Stuff outside of the Lord of the Rings, right? So she's admitting, one, she's trying to get you to watch Rings of Power. Two, she's admitting that the problem that you may have is if you try to compare them to Peter Jackson's adaptations, or if you expect them to stick to the lore that Tolkien had written. Okay. Not only that, but the Tolkien fandom is massive and well educated, and it will be quick to point out errors, inconsistencies, and any un-Tolkienish elements. Knowing this, let us all take a deep breath. The Rings of Power is not a book report. Those of us who are purists must expand our imaginations and tolerance to let in the inevitable creative liberties that will be present in this TV series. So right there, she sort of gives you the backhanded compliment, right? Tolkien's fandom is massive. It's huge, right? Which is why they bought the IP to begin with, because they figured they could make a lot of money with it, right? But then she adds, it's well educated, meaning we're not your typical stupid fan, okay? And this is a problem in her eyes. She's listing the issues that the show is up against, right? That they're well educated, and that those same fans will be quick to point out errors, inconsistencies, and any un-Tolkienish elements in a Tolkien-based adaptation or an adaptation of Tolkien's work. So in essence, what she's saying is, if you view this as anything other than a brand new world created by pain and decay, and you try to compare it to either Peter Jackson's films, you try to hold the lore to what J.R.R. Tolkien wrote, you come at it by pointing out inconsistencies, errors, or un-Tolkien-like elements, that's the problem, okay? And that us fans, who were told, hey, we're making this Tolkien adaptation, right? Rings of Power, that we should take a deep breath, okay? And expand our imaginations to allow for inevitable creative liberties to be present in the TV series. That's her take. Literally, we are one paragraph into this story, okay? I'm sorry, 2 paragraphs into this story, and that's her take. Her take is, go watch the show, stop being such a purist, stop pointing out errors, inconsistencies, and un-Tolkien-like elements in a Tolkien adaptation, okay? Do not compare it to Peter Jackson's films, and do not hold it to the lore that J.R.R. Tolkien wrote. If you can do all of those things, you'll like the show. That's according to her. I'm just reading it, right? Don't kill the messenger. But let's see what else this genius has to say. Nostalgia is also a powerful filter through which we view media, new or old. When my college friends learned that I had never seen the Disney Channel movie Camp Rock, they were flabbergasted and proceeded to help me right this wrong immediately. I watched the whole thing, which was more than fair because it was terrible. but they loved and were loyal to it because it held a special place in their childhood. It would be easy to let nostalgia be the driving force of our arguments when comparing the Rings of Power to the Lord of the Rings films, not so much the Hobbit films. I think we all concur. Okay, so right there she's saying you should not be using the Lord of the Rings films as the standard by which you hold this show, Rings of Power, accountable, right? Because that's just wrong, right? That she just she's saying it's based on nostalgia, but it's like, no, it's because you're basing something on a beloved adaptation of a novel or a series of novels and a complete shit show of one. But I digress. I'll continue. I admit that I am guilty of all of the above. I was cynical and skeptical of the show ever since I was aware of its inception. Okay, there we agree. I thought they're going to mess it all up. They're not going to do their research. It's going to be too flashy and modern, and it will never compare to the movies, which I also thought and was correct. From the first announcement to the trailer's release, I never relented in my opinion that I would disapprove. Friends, I am far more than pleasantly surprised. My original surmisings were, in part, the fault of the trailers, which were so different from the actual show. The trailers and previews are indeed flashy, modern, and totally misleading. Throw out any opinions you have of the show based on them. They are not reliable sources. I recommend that you first dive into the primary source and then form your opinions accordingly. Until then, allow me to give you a taste of what's to come if you choose to take the plunge. Lady, I did. Okay? Yes, the trailers let you know that this series was going to be a complete and utter shit show. And you know what? Having watched the entirety of season 1, it was a complete and utter shit show. For all the reasons you told me I shouldn't be judging it, okay? Because I'm well educated and I can understand logical inconsistencies, right? i.e., if a map shows you that something is several hundred miles away and you can only get there by horse, it's going to take you more than just a day, right? Or, 5 ships to carry how many hundreds of soldiers and their armor and their weapons and their provisions and their horses, okay? And you have 5 boats, okay? Those are logical inconsistencies, right? That me, being one of those, fandoms that are well educated, tend to point out and hold the show accountable for screwing up, okay? The other would be the un-Tolkien-like elements, right? Like, I don't know, not sticking with the lore. The fact that you have your insufferable bitch main character, Guy Ladriel, okay, running around wanting to commit genocide, okay, when she's supposed to be the good guy, wanting to run around and commit genocide and totally ignoring the fact that, according to what Tolkien wrote, she should be having a husband right now and a daughter, okay? But no husband, because she needs agency. No daughter, because, that would just cramp her style. Instead, let's have her go on a vengeance-filled rampage across the countryside looking to commit genocide against an entire race of beings. Okay? But I'm not supposed to point that out. Anyway, I digress. My first impression was of the sets. We've come so far with CGI, and here it shows, but in the best way possible. Sure, some scenes seem a little too dreamlike, but the shots of the forests of Lindon, the dwarven city of Khazad-dûm, and the fabled Numenor are nothing short of visual nectar. No, I'm sorry, I've seen better stuff on the legendary journeys of Hercules back in the early 2000s. The beauty of New Zealand combined with the digital talents of those behind the scenes have created masterpieces. It is especially moving for those who have only seen Khazad-dûm in ruins and the fading city of Gondor that is only a tired shadow of Numenor. Seeing how alive these places were at one time put the setting of The Lord of the Rings in perspective. A land in danger of being overcome by the growing evil in Mordor. Compared to that, Middle-earth in the Rings of Power is young and glorious, despite the evil that will soon appear. My second impression was of the script. It is by no means perfect. That is the fucking understatement of the year so far in 2023. But they managed to keep a Tolkien-ish essence that feels as familiar, intentional, and powerful as even the original film trilogy. I'm calling BS on that. I'm sorry, Livy or Miss Good Game, whatever. No. This Rings of Power tried and failed miserably multiple times to come across as Tolkien-ish in essence, right? In terms of the script, okay? And instead, what did we get? We got, do you know why the ship floats and the rock sinks? Because the ship looks up and the rock looks down. And that's Tolkien-ish? I don't think so. Anyway, sorry. Of course, anything with a Tolkien flair is going to be flowery, dense, and dramatic at times. But that's the point. Okay, so now you're excusing it. So you're saying that Tolkien is flowery, dense, and dramatic at times. Okay? I could describe Tolkien's style in a lot of ways. Flowery, maybe when he goes off on his poetry tangents. Dense, definitely. And dramatic, yeah, but not in the same way that Rings of Power was, where Rings of Power came across as being forced and fake. Okay? And it was like you're trying to sound like Tolkien and failing, and therefore I'm noticing that you're trying but failing, right? Whereas Tolkien's just being Tolkien. Anyway, let's continue. But that's the point. Additionally, I can confirm that the writers did in fact do their research. How? Show us the receipts, Livy. Right? You're saying you can confirm that the writers did their research. How can you confirm this? Were you there? For those who don't know, the show takes place between the events of the Silmarillion and the Hobbit. No, it takes place during the events of the Silmarillion. While I have not read the appendices from which the Rings of Power content comes, I have read and studied the Silmarillion. Okay, so you're saying to us that we should trust you, but you're saying that you read the entire book that is the Silmarillion, the book that even most Tolkien fans have the hardest time making the transition to because it's not a standard novel, right? You're saying that you not only read that, lady, but you studied it, but that you did not read the 103 pages that is the appendices of Return of the King, which is where the entire show Rings of Power comes from. So now, basically, what you've done is you said the entire point of your article, which is to try to convince people to watch the Rings of Power, okay, is pointless because you admit that you haven't even read the material that they based the show on. Let me tell you, I became so excited when I saw The Two Trees of Valinor that, by the second episode, I had laid out all my notes, maps, and elven family trees on the floor while watching to see how many Silmarillion references I could catch. There are quite a few. That is true, there are quite a few, but they're just references, right? And a lot of times, they're wrong. There are some familiar characters in this story, which is always a risk. Galadriel and Elrond are large shoes to fill, but if you ask me, Morfydd Clark and Robert Aramayo fit them well. One thing both actors really accomplish is preserving the characters' personalities in such a way that you can see their potential to eventually mature into who they are in the Lord of the Rings films. Lady, are you fucking high? Like, are you serious? Galadriel in the Rings of Power is a genocidal bitch, to put it mildly. Like, she literally is out to wipe entire races of beings off the planet. Okay? But yet, according to you, you could see how they're going to mature. into who they are in the Peter Jackson films, which, by the way, you keep referencing, but didn't you start off the beginning of your article saying we shouldn't be comparing them? But now you're comparing them. Hypocrite much? Anyway, continuing on. Such a way the potential who they are in the Lord of the Rings. I don't know where they found Morfydd Clark, neither do I. But she gets young Galadriel right on the money. Not according to Tolkien, and if you studied the Silmarillion and read the Silmarillion like you claim, not according to that either. Okay? No, she even if you try to make the loose argument that like, oh, well, he does mention that she was, athletic and stuff like that. That's not the character that did the show The Rings of Power gives us. Like, come on, seriously? Other than those two, we have a host of new faces who are fast becoming near and dear to my heart. That's a you problem. At the top of the list is Nori Brandyfoot, a curious Harfoot who is convinced that simply helping someone in need is an important role to play in a story much bigger than her. Closely followed by her are Durin IV, heir to the throne of Khazad-dûm, and his wife Disa, whose singing is as powerful as her words are sharp. Their friendship with Elrond has been my favorite relationship to see unfold, providing many laughs and many more sweet moments. One more underlying detail I noticed about the show is in the soundtrack. There are clear themes and styles of music that change depending on the setting. The natural percussion and rhythms of the Harfoots, the ethereal voices of the elves, the low resonant choir in Khazad-dûm, the somber Celtic strings of the Southlands, and the epic harmonies and progressions of Númenor. After going back and watching season 1 a second time, it's that good. I even noticed some musical Easter eggs that give hints to future revelations in the story. Yet another exhibition of the clear intentionality and care that the creators have put into this show. Every facet has been delicately planned and thought out, which shows that, if anything, these people know their audience. No, no, and no. Are you absolutely daft, woman? Like, are you insane? Okay, now, first of all, I think you're suffering some trauma because you had to watch it a second time, right? Now, I watched it the first time, and I've gone back and I've watched individual clips of certain things, like if doing a recording here and stuff like that, but I won't sit through the entire season in its entirety again, right? Because even I know that as strong as I am, that might be too much for even me, right? So, the music is okay. I will give them that, right? Bear McCreary, I will, but it's not Howard Shore. Not by a long shot. Not even close. I love Bear McCreary's stuff. I especially liked what he did with the Godzilla films and updating their themes recently for like King of the Monsters and all that stuff. But he's no Howard Shore. He's just not. Not yet, anyway. He's not at that point in his career where he's that good yet, at least in my opinion. So, I mean, okay, the music was okay. I won't argue that, but as good as Howard Shore, I don't know about that. Now, to try and turn around and say that the creators, that their intentionality there, yes, there is intentionality. And I think that's something that some of us loud critics of this show have been saying from the get-go, is that there is intentionality there, and it shows, but it's intentionality of all the worst aspects of what you could do with the Tolkien legendarium and lore, right? Race swapping characters simply for the sake of race swapping characters, right? And then not even having the goddamn common courtesy to give those characters any type of realistic, thoroughly fleshed out backstory that gives them depth and makes them part of the world. Instead, you just say, oh, we're just going to have a black elf because we need a black elf. Right? We're just going to have a black hobbit because we need a black hobbit. You don't give them, there's nothing that it doesn't make sense. Why, again, and I keep coming back to this, why are they the only ones? You have one black elf, one black hobbit, one black dwarf. Okay? Why are they the only ones that we see? Are there no others? If so, why not? And if there are, where the hell are they? Okay? But you didn't think that. You just felt we need to check a box. Let's check a box. And you did it. Okay? And then you get mad at us when we call you out on it. That is intentionality, Mrs. Good Game. All right, so let's continue. For all you purists whose minds are still not swayed, I guess that's me, I do empathize with you. However, my empathy is not without pity. It's a shame to think that we let our standards, set by the great artists of the past, hinder us from experiencing the great art of today because we don't think it will measure up. To sit stubbornly in our chairs saying, all of the great adventures have been claimed and collected. No point in going out there to find a new one when the best stories already rest on my bookshelves. Perhaps you are content reading your old faithfuls by the fire, safe in your home without risk. Yet there is another adventure out there to be had, and a large party has already left to have it. If you have any inkling to join us, it's not too late. Grab your coat and walking stick. Forget your handkerchiefs stitched with familiar patterns and catch up. We've still got a long way ahead, and the more, the merrier. Okay, so now at the end of the article, we get to the guilt trip, right? Like, oh, all right, well, if you're still not on board with how great the Rings of Power is, then I feel sorry for you. Yeah, because you're just too afraid to experience something new and experience new adventures. You'd rather just sit and rehash the old tired stuff that's sitting on your shelf. No, you dumb fool. You fool of a took. That is not it at all. Again, I've even come up with ways, and other folks have in the comment section of my videos, where they could have incorporated the more quote unquote woke aspects, right? I.e., race swapping. You could have done them in a way in which they made sense, in which they added to the world of Middle Earth. But the showrunners chose not to do that. Okay, you could have limited the scope of the series to just tell the fall of Numenor, right? Okay, instead of trying to tell it all, right? But you couldn't do that because then you wouldn't be able to milk the Hobbit nostalgia member berries. You wouldn't be able to milk the Gandalf nostalgia member berries, right? So you had to hit all the major things of the Silmarillion, right? Of the Second Age. Okay, others like me have said you could have done an entirely new show based in South Harad or in Rune, right? In the East, the land of the Easterlings, where you could have had largely non-white casts, okay, which would have checked off your little corporate check boxes, okay, and still told new, exciting, fresh, unheard of before stories within Tolkien's Middle Earth. And us fans would have appreciated that. Okay, because I would rather have seen a brand new story about the Easterlings or the Haradrim, right, than the crap show that we got. Okay, so Miss Good Game, Miss Evil Bond Villainess named author, Livy Good Game, I will say to you that no, darling, you don't have to feel sad for me, and I don't want your pity, nor do I need it, nor do hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Tolkien fans around the world. We don't want it, and we don't need it. It's us who feel sorry for you, because you're so swayed with new and shiny that you can't see when new and shiny is coming at the expense of what's already good and established. Okay, you're buying into this idea that you need to tear down the old in order to make way for the new, instead of planting seeds for the new next to what's old. Let the established writers provide the shade so that your new story can grow and flourish, right? You don't have to tear down one to make room for the other. And unfortunately, Ms. Good Game, you cannot see that. And I feel sorry for you. So no, save your pity. Save your pity. I'll keep you in my thoughts as I continue to rip apart the show for the piece of garbage that it is. Anyway, folks, I know it's a long one, and I ranted and raved, and my apologies for that. But I'm gonna end it right there. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Do you think Mrs. Good Game knows what the heck she's talking about? I certainly don't. I don't agree with her in any way, shape, or form. And like I said, I am surprised that a article like that would come from a source like that, a place that is named itself after the back room in the pub where the Inklings, Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, and them would meet Um, and I'm just saddened by that, because really that just shows, that somebody who's caught up with just being in the now and in the moment, that's a clear case of FOMO, as the kids say, right? Fear of missing out. And she's just hopping on the hype train. And I mean, she's doing it a little bit late, but she's just hopping on the hype train. And it's sad. It's sad, because every one of those arguments can easily be shot down. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. And remember, if you like the video, like the video. If you feel like sharing the video, by all means do so. It gets us out there. It gets us seen. It gets us growing. Right? It gets us growing, because unlike Miss Good Game, I do believe there are more of us that think like us than there are of folks that think like her. And we stand for something, and we believe in something, and we're not going to let it be torn down and ripped apart just for the sake of new and shiny. Right? We're just not going to do that. Anyway, if you have not subscribed, I would hope that you would consider giving the channel your subscription and joining the army of beautiful badasses that we are, and helping us hold the line as we protect the professor and his works. Anyway, folks, I will see you on the next one. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Remember, be good, be awesome, be safe, but more importantly, stay more dorkish. Peace.